Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today, my guest is a comedian from Seattle. She's performed at multiple festivals such as Bumbershoot. She recently released an album in 2020 called Mostly Finger Guns that went #1 on the iTunes charts, correct?
Yes.
And she also has 2 podcasts, Hug Life and Dumb Pitches, which I actually produce. It's my pleasure to introduce. Oh, actually, she also has this really funny documentary series called 80 for 80, which I loved watching.
Yeah, good.
It's my pleasure to introduce Monica Nevi.
Yay. Thank you. I'll clap for myself.
There we go. So I'm still, I don't know if this is the right word. I feel so weird saying like virgin to anything, but
I mean, whatever. You can be honest. This is a safe space.
There we go. I'm still a virgin to comedy because I'm not even old enough to go to comedy shows yet. So
right. So
Yeah.
you haven't been in a club at all?
No, I haven't
Okay.
even been to it. Like, I like interview artists for a living, and I know some pretty dope artists, and I still get kicked out of concert
like music
venues.
and stuff? That's funny. I mean, some comedy clubs. Most comedy clubs do, like their early show is 18 and up or 16 and up sometimes. So
it's like a matinee.
So we could figure out how to lose your comedy virginity. But
There we go. So the only comedian I've had on is Ramin Nazer when I was in LA.
Okay.
And he has a podcast with Shane Moss called Mind Under Matter. I think that's what it's called.
Something like that. Yeah,
And,
those guys are.
His story is crazy, but I think it's awesome that I really didn't even realize there's like a comedy scene in Seattle.
Mhm.
So could you like break down comedy in Seattle for me?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's with most. I mean, you would, if you're surprised by Seattle, you would be surprised about like these small towns that have like a comedy scene. It's really interesting. But Seattle's actually probably one of what I would call a mid-major city.
Oh,
I was
shit.
an athlete, so I refer to things in college terms. But so you have your big ones like New York and LA, and then you'd have like Atlanta, Chicago, and Austin now are
Mhm.
kind of like right below
Because Joe
that.
Rogan, or is it even outside of Joe?
A lot of people, well, yeah, when he moved there, a bunch of people moved there, so whatever. But then after that, you would have Seattle, Portland, Denver, places like that. I'm trying to think of what on like maybe Cleveland, Cincinnati, like places that are still a pretty big city, but
Mhm.
not as big, but they have like these really great comedy scenes. So what you want is multiple clubs, which we have 3 in Seattle, and then there's 2 in Tacoma, which is close enough. So it's kind of one scene, but Tacoma really has its own thing going on too.
Right.
And yeah, so there's a bunch of comedy clubs. Then you have like what people call alt rooms, but it's like an independent venue that does shows, not every single night, but once a week or whatever. And
So could that be like a concert venue also then? Or?
yeah, you can use those. A lot of people have been using those more now. So the clubs are, you work from Thursday to Saturday usually. You can do Sunday, or some clubs are Wednesday to Sunday, which is a lot. Or if you're in Vegas, it's the whole damn week. But then if you're like, I don't want to do a full club and I can make more money just producing my own show at a music venue, like in El Corazon or something like that.
Wait, they have
Those types of places.
They have comedy shows at those?
Mm-hmm.
That's
you
crazy.
can just use them essentially. But yeah, so then you'll see people kind of do a small tour where they would do like a venue like that in Portland, in Seattle, and then in Bellingham or something like that, and kind of just go up instead of doing the whole weekend at one club.
I hear when I'm listening to comedian podcasts, I feel like people talk more about Tacoma versus Seattle for
Right
comedy.
now, yeah. Well, they just have better clubs. I mean, I probably shouldn't say that. But they just have 2 really big clubs. One is new. One has been there for a long time, Tacoma Comedy Club. And they own one in Spokane, one in Appleton, Wisconsin, one in Oklahoma City. And they intend to expand, I think. So they have a good structure. They get a lot of A-list headliners kind of thing. And then up here, they're just smaller rooms. They're great clubs. They get really good comics, but they fit less people. So I think bigger names that want to come up here tend to go to Tacoma because we make more money with more people being able to fit in the club.
And it's not normal to for a Dave Chappelle or Joe Rogan to perform at Tacoma Dome. That's like not a normal
Not in
venue.
Tacoma Dome. I mean, that happened once, but arenas are hard, I think. Not that I've ever done one, but because like theaters are great. I think theaters are really good for comedy because comedy clubs are different than most other venues because they have a table and you're drinking and there's a server the whole time. And with music, you can play over that. But with comedy, you can't really. Like, you have to be louder than that or just get enough attention, you know. So if they get a little bit rowdy, you can lose them pretty easily. But in a theater, they don't have the table. If they want concessions, they got to go out, you know, so everyone's facing the same way. It's actually a really conducive venue for comedy. So then you can get bigger and bigger. And then I guess if you're a Chappelle/Rogan,
Right.
you would be like, well, let's fit as many people as possible into an arena. I don't know how that goes. I guess it depends on how it's shaped. But yeah, it's just big. You're bound to do well in that many. Somebody's gonna like you if you got that many people in there.
But then how do you build up like your name in comedy and in hip hop or just being an artist before the pandemic? It's completely changed now. There's fucking COVID and TikTok and all that.
Right.
But before that, the main way was going to open mics and just building up your guests, and then eventually have enough of a draw that you can go to like a local venue or something like that. How does it work for comedy?
I mean, that sounds pretty similar on a basis level. Like so for me, I've been doing stand-up for almost 11 years, which is
Holy shit.
makes me feel old. But yeah, so for me, I went and watched an open mic a couple of times and then decided to do it. And then after kind of months of just going to open mics, and really for comedy, you're trying to make new material. You know, that's when you're actually performing new material that you've written. With music, it seems like you're like, here's an original song that I wrote, and hoping people will like you.
Yeah.
I think we think less of like, I hope this audience is now a fan, and more of like, I hope this joke works. I don't know. So then you do that until other comics, other producers, the club, wherever you're doing the open mic, whatever, sees you and is like, do you want to work on the weekend, or do you want to do a booked showcase, hopefully paid, but you never know, you know. And so then you start doing those, and then more people find out you're good. And so it's almost with comedy, instead of building a fan base first, you're networking with other people in your scene to just get, you know, actual shows. And then I think that's when you start building a fan base, kind of. I mean, I do think it takes quite a while.
Right.
And this was what would happen before. And then, you know, the internet changes things. I mean, even with just like YouTube and Instagram and whatnot, that you can put more stuff out and people would follow you that way sometimes. But with comedy, it can be detrimental too, because if you put something out too early and it's not good, then it's like people are like kind of write you off a little bit. So now it's changed, I think, probably in the same way that music has. I mean, there's people who are doing tours at big clubs solely because they have, you know, over 500,000 TikTok followers.
That's crazy.
Right, which is crazy. And sometimes it's not because of stand-up. It's not stand-up, you know? Like, so then they're going to do a stand-up show when you liked them because they do a character or something, you know? So it's it's changed a lot. And honestly, I don't really know how to use it the best way possible. I mean, I think we're all guessing a little bit, which I'm sure is the same for musicians. But
beforehand, like, it's still kind of, I think artists are starting to realize they have to be like more business oriented.
Yeah.
But still, there's tons of artists who feel like some magical fairy or someone's going to find them and they're going to be successful. But like, how does that work for comedy? Like, are comedians found, or do they have to go to these clubs?
I think that is so common also in comedy that you think. So, I mean, so yes, before you would do, you know, you keep working up, you kind of do the clubs. Then most people move to a bigger city, and that's why, is because they hope somebody's going to walk in and see them and go, oh, you're famous now, you know, and which is happened like 3 times, you know, like it's just not very common. And so there's other things, like there's Just for Laughs, which is a huge festival in Montreal, or any other festival, I guess. You go and do a festival, it's really only like 10-minute sets, but the idea is that there's a lot of industry people there, people that book America's Got Talent or late night shows or whatever. Which, again, with those things shifting, those mean less than they used to. You know, having a late night set is something I really want to do, not because it's going to break my career, you know, it's going to be this breakthrough. It's just because I want to, I think. But before that was like a huge thing. Like if you did Conan or whatever, then you were a headliner now. You could headline any club because you had that credit. And now it just doesn't mean as much. It almost doesn't mean as much as somebody who's been doing stand-up for 3 years having 1 million TikTok followers. You know,
Right.
which I get it. It gets butts in seats. That's all the clubs really want. So it's people have that same perception of like, if I go to New York or if I go to LA, that I'm going to do shows and just the right person's going to be in the audience and then everything changes. And it just doesn't happen that often that way.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Here in Seattle, I feel like a lot of artists are realizing that the venues in a way are kind of like against them.
Are they?
So like they get shit pay, or like they have to have done something phenomenal, like work with Drake or something for like venues to notice them. So like they're throwing their own events.
Yeah.
Like whether it's outside of a fucking venue, like I don't know if you know who the Martial Law Band is, but they threw this thing called Fremont Fridays, like the entire summer, and it was in the back of the LTD bar and lounge.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It was actually pretty successful, but like people are thinking of ways to like just without going through like venues. Like how is that for comedy? Like I know like once again I'm such a newbie to comedy.
Well, the more you're talking about this, like it sounds fairly familiar to what you know.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, I think this whole experience changed the way that we thought about venues so much. Because, yeah, you would just go, this is how much the club pays, even though it's not very good. Or they always had an excuse. And then you're like, oh, I've produced a few things on my own now.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're making way more money than that. I don't know why you're not paying comics. Even $100 more would be great, you know? And they just don't do it. And so then it drives us the same way to go, well, then fine. I'm going to produce a show at a theater on my own, or I'm going to, do whatever, do outdoor stuff, which has never been a thing here ever. It's been a ton, in LA, they do outdoor shows all the time. But here, the outdoor comedy shows didn't exist. And then they had to here in Portland. And now there's like a ton of them. And then you realize you go, oh, I could be making more money. It's more work, but doing this on my own. And I think that the venues and, club owners and bookers wanted us to think that we had to go through them before. And now it's become very apparent that we didn't. And so I don't know what's going to happen to them, but they seem to be some of them are adapting at least for comedy bookers and being like, yeah, I'll do a door deal with you. You can use the venue, but you can produce it yourself, which comedy clubs want door deals with people who don't sell tickets. And you want a door deal when you know that you can sell tickets because they want to give you a guarantee if you're going to sell it out because then they get all that extra money.
Yeah.
So it is more work, but it seems like it's kind of the way that we have to go depending on who you are. And then this live stream stuff really changed the game too because we never even thought about it before. There was a few somebody did a virtual reality comedy show where you could wear the goggles. But before, there just wasn't a lot of live stream shows, and then we had to, and now there's a ton of them. And it actually, we started right away when everything got canceled in March of 2020. That weekend, that Saturday, I just did a YouTube show from my living room, and it went really well. And so I think part of you goes, oh yeah, there's people who want to see me that can't.
Mm-hmm.
Ever, I don't come to the tiniest towns. Well, sometimes, but maybe not the correct tiny town. And now that person can watch me, and then whatever it leads to, donations, or if you charge ticket prices or buying your album, whatever it is, it trickles down differently. And so, which is actually why I started the podcast I do here. I mean, just to have a YouTube
Tell people what your podcast is about, by the way.
Oh, it's called Dumb Pitches, and I interview successful people about their worst ideas. So
amazing pitch.
Yeah, it's a good tagline. Now, yeah, it's a lot of comics, but people who've done cool stuff. Then they come on and share stuff that was really stupid, and then it kind of evens it all out. Everybody has bad ideas.
Do comedians think they're not think, but do you see yourself as an artist, or do you think you're a comedian?
I don't know why I thought you were going to be do you think you're funny? Yes. I've had this argument or conversation many times. I struggle with thinking that it's an art. I do think
you're releasing albums though, so.
Right. I do think the most people say it is an art. Some people say it borders on philosophy a little bit, which maybe is giving them too much credit of being I'm like Socrates, everybody listens to me. But it is, I think the creative process for it is very similar to other art forms, which is different for everybody, but how you write, how you come up with stuff, and then, it is a live performance. I think it still is art. And I think that they love, if I'm stereotyping my own group, we love the tortured artist thing. And so I think you kind of have to be an artist to buy into that. So a lot of comics struggle because they think that they have to be, because comedy really comes from a painful place,
right?
Which is weird, but it's true.
So you can't be like a rich, snotty guy being a comedian?
You can't be like this. Well, you can, it turns out. But it's harder, I think, to write relatable stuff if you are just super happy and rich all the time.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of comics think that they have to live that lifestyle of like late nights, lonely, drink too much, just sadness, because they think that that's where they pull from. And I know plenty of people who have kind of turned their life around into a positive place, and then it actually opens up a different space than you've ever written from before. So it still can be a really creative place. But I think if you buy into that sadness creating art, then you definitely have to consider yourself an artist.
Yeah, I think a lot of the so-called artists, like musicians, I feel like a lot of artists and comedians share the same kind of mindsets.
It sounds so similar. And as a former athlete, I felt like...
Tell people about that real quick. I know you've talked about it a ton, so I don't want to just
no, that's okay.
Badger you about.
I played basketball my whole life. I played in college, and I got hurt, and actually that's why I started doing stand-up, is because I couldn't play anymore. So, whatever. But I spent my whole life around athletes, and for a long time I thought my mind was very scientific and cut and dry, and and with basketball, even though I was point guard, so it was a very creative position, but it is if things aren't going well, you work harder. That's it. That's pretty much no other reason or answer. And with comedy, they don't have that same mindset as an athlete. So I struggle with that at first because came across as fairly insensitive to other comics, because I was like, I don't know why you're complaining. Do something about it. You know what I mean? Because that's just what I was used to getting yelled at. And
but isn't that the right way to think? I
don't know. But I think for me, what I've noticed with my writing, at least, is that if I try to force myself to do it, it's just not as good. It needs to be in kind of a relaxed, kind of a natural...
Smoke a Jerry.
Yeah, and that does help sometimes. Well, sometimes with comedy that can be tricky, because sometimes I'll be like, "This is hilarious. This is so funny," and then I'll write it down, and then in the morning I'll be like, "What the hell was I thinking?" But anyways, yeah. So I think you need to be a little bit more relaxed, and it just depends on the person. Art is subjective. I think the way that you create art then is subjective. Mm-hmm. There's no correct way to do it. Right. And so in my head, I was just like, well, just work harder. What do you, and that wasn't, it got me in trouble a few times. But,
oh, God.
But the funny part is that, athletes, it's pretty common for athletes to want to be musicians. Or
God,
act,
especially
or something.
A lot of basketball players, they try to be rappers.
Yes, exactly. And which there's been a few that wanted to do comedy.
Oh no.
Well, Blake Griffin, I don't know if you'd ever heard that.
I know Blake Griffin.
Yeah, he had an internship with Funny or Die.
Oh God.
And he is fairly funny, but then that's sketch stuff, which is different than stand up. And then they I don't even really remember. They challenged him, I guess, to do stand up in LA at this place called the West Side, which is funny, and everybody in there signs the wall in the green room. And that night he did a set, and I've heard that it went okay. Mm-hmm. And then DeAndre Jordan did a set, and it went really well, which I thought was funny. But I think you never really know, because everyone's like, it's two Clippers players in here just trying stand up. This is cool that we're getting to see this. But yeah, they had signed on the wall, and I think DeAndre Jordan said that he had on the wall was like, I did better than Blake, which is funny. But yeah, that's new, that people want to also be stand-up comedians.
Does Will Ferrell own Funny or Die, or is he just associated with them?
They created it. Yeah, I don't know if he's still yes,
he's had
made
some
it,
funny
but
shit
I don't
in
know
there.
if it's all. Yeah, that's how it first started. I think was him and the other guy, Adam Mchale or whatever, his partner.
So are comedians for artists, hip hop artists, pop artists, whatever, like the overall goal that a lot of people in Seattle want, in the art scene at least, is to make a big community where people actually know, like if someone knows one thing that's successful, they can share it to the other genre or whatever. But like right now, things are really cliquey. So we're trying to fix that right now. That's what I do with the podcast. But like, how does that relate to like comedy? Like, do comedians in Seattle, are they focused on making comedy in Seattle bigger, or are they focused on helping each other, or is it like just your own thing when you're doing comedy in Seattle?
I think there's factions with different goals. It's cliquey. I think, I don't know why comedy everywhere is pretty cliquey, but I think it is that, and maybe this happens with genres of music, but with comedy, there's just different directions. You know, some people talk about politics all the time. Some people just do jokey jokes. Some people, are really dirty. Some people are clean, so then sometimes you can get people who are like, well, I don't like this other group of comics because they're all dirty or whatever it is. That doesn't happen that often, but you do tend to click with people more. Or like for us, when I lived in LA, everyone from Seattle and everyone from Portland, we were kind of a group, just because we already knew each other. I think here in Seattle or in some of the smaller scenes, it's become more apparent maybe in like the last 3 or 4 years that you should be building the scene up more than preparing to leave it. And so it started more to really create a better community and kind of been able to go in between the clubs and the independent venues, because for a while it was like either you're an alt comic or you're a club comic. That's it. But then now, at least for some of us, it's pretty easy to kind of do all of it.
Is there more money in being like a club comic versus an alt comic, or how's that work?
I think technically a club comic, if you were just doing their shows because they have more shows and more, you can work more clubs. But if you were putting on your own shows at a alt venue, you could make more money that way.
Got it.
But the alt shows themselves that are like monthly or whatever, they typically do not pay as much as the clubs. But it's, whatever. It's just a mess. Just work wherever you want to. I don't know. But yeah, I think, one, I would love to see more things filmed here. Not necessarily like entire feature films or whatever, which would be great because I know we have odd tax laws and stuff here as far as movies go.
There's a new movie coming out soon. You saw that? The guy, I keep forgetting his name. Oh yeah, I think it's Steven Soderbergh or whatever. He directed what's it called? Ocean's 11
okay.
and Contagion.
Nice.
And then he's making a new movie right now, and I think it's maybe wrapped up, but it was in Pike Place. Not Pike Place, Pioneer Square.
Nice.
So they cleaned up all of like the homeless people, and now I think they're back now. But
well, they got a nicer place to hang out.
But you're right, the taxes.
That's great.
Here.
Yeah, just more stuff being made here. More people feeling like they can create things like this here. I mean, that's huge. We never really had podcast studios or film studios or anything here, and I think adding those things in this area is huge. I think more artists understanding that they can stay here and still have really successful, if not more successful, careers from here. And I'm not saying you have to only play to this community. You can do the whole world just because of the internet now without having to move to LA or New York. And there's so many people that move there and then leave because they go, well, I don't want to live there. But two, I can still maintain, travel, create, do all these things from wherever I want to be. And I want to see more people be here and really create things from here. And I would love for more of us to reach across the aisle, reach across the art form,
That's what I'm thinking.
I would love to do comedy with music, or, we work with some of the improv comics sometimes and do like a mixture show. We've done drag and comedy, whatever. I think that us supporting each other is huge. And I just think that not only the comedy community here, I would love to see continue to grow, but just art in general here. I think it's a really great place for audiences, and we need to give them more stuff,
So how would you describe, is that a common question? Like, how do you describe your comedy?
Yeah, it is a common question, but funny. No, I mean, yes, but it's pretty, inconsequential is a word I've been using lately, which isn't
Ooh.
probably the best way, but it's I like to have fun. I want people to come in and kind of forget everything that we've been worrying about. Not that I don't, talk about it, but it's observational. It's things that have happened to me, things that are going on, that I hope people can relate to, and then it's just silly and funny and
Silly and funny.
hopefully it's not too political, it's not divisive, it's not like I want as many people as possible to enjoy it, and that's just pretty naturally how I write. I don't gravitate to really like being angry or really political stuff or anything. I have this odd thing, and the older I get, the more it is that I'm just like, can everybody just have a good time? Can we all? I think I'm codependent in that way, where I'm like, is everyone okay? Can I help anybody? And I think that comes out in my comedy, where I'm like, I just want everyone to have fun, and let's just relax and forget, because things are pretty shitty most of the time. I mean, not to be super pessimistic, but I think, especially recently, it's stressful. It's stressful to just be a person right now.
Yeah.
And so if you can come in and forget for an hour and a half and have a good time, then that's what I'm going for.
There we go. Do you think you're a pessimistic or optimistic
I'm
person?
definitely optimistic as a person.
That's good.
It's hard sometimes to be optimistic in a larger general sense, but for myself, very much positive thinking, positive affirmations. I meditate all the time.
Third eye.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, very optimistic. It helps me mentally stay out of, because I can spiral. So if I am just being pessimistic, then I really shift that way, so that I just try to, it doesn't hurt anything to think positively. So
are there like gatekeepers when it comes to comedy in Seattle, at least?
Yeah, or at least they try to be. It seems to be shifting as to who are those people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's when you have the power to book people and actually allow them to work, then you can abuse that pretty easily. And I think some people do, not only just in the work space, but I think people have abused it in really, really scary ways before. So, which maybe leads to more of the independent
like
kind
fucking
of
like Harvey Weinstein ways.
Oh yeah.
Jeez. In Seattle?
Yeah, it's pretty common, and I don't know if just in passionate work, when people are really passionate about something that they really want, and then people can take advantage of that. But it happens a lot in comedy. I mean, you guys have heard the terrible stories of people.
I heard I really don't know why I haven't noticed things like this before, but like 2 days ago, I was in North Seattle, and for the first time, I saw a girl get catcalled, and I had never seen that before.
Really?
I was like, holy shit, that's craziness. Huh. But then girls tell me that shit happens all the time.
Yeah.
But I was like, wow.
That kind of came up a few years ago. It's interesting. I don't know. That is very common. It's very common to get catcalled, to get hit on when you don't want to be talked to. Like, that's very common for women. And then there was this big thing in comedy where it was like, bookers would say inappropriate things, make you feel weird. Somebody got in trouble for like asking for nude photos and stuff, like when they're trying to book people.
Oh, God.
And then a lot of male comics were like, that doesn't happen. And we're like, yeah, we just don't tell you. Like we should, but we don't feel safe because you don't want to be seen as like this tattletale on this guy that everybody likes, or that is a gatekeeper, so so then those things started to come out with the Louis C.K. and all that stuff. So it's a weird,
because comedy is like mostly males still, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of female comics. There's a ton of great female comics, but in the grand scheme of comedy, there's a ton of fucking comics. So a lot of them are dudes, and unfortunately, that is part of it. Is how long can you make sure you feel safe? And, a lot of people won't work certain places because they don't feel safe. So that really diminishes that place's ability to book female comics. I mean, some of them don't want to be there.
Who's like a female icon in comedy? Like people, when they think of male icons, it's like a Dave Chappelle or whoever. Like, who is it for comedy for women?
I think most people would say Sarah Silverman. I mean, she's incredible. One of those people who, because like a Chappelle, I feel like he really evolves and kind of keeps getting better and changing. And I think she's one of those people, like if you look at her older stuff versus her stuff now, it's incredible. I mean, really, really, really good. I love Maria Bamford. She was one of the first female comics I'd ever seen. I didn't really know that was a thing until her. And she really kind of has her own, she just does her own thing and has this huge fan base that knows exactly what she's doing, and she's just really, really funny. I think some other people like that have the similar story where they worked really hard for a long time and then something popped and people see them as like, oh, she just got famous, but really she's been working really hard for a long time. Like Tiffany Haddish, I think a lot of people are like, they judge her a lot, and I'm like, she worked so hard for so long. She just happened to get in this movie that everybody knows her from now. And now she's continuing to create opportunities for other stand-ups. I think like those are the type of careers, the type of people we look up to and go, oh, that's what Chelsea Peretti is my favorite comedian. And she kind of went back and forth between, like, she was on a TV show. So then a lot of people were like, oh, I know her from this. And it's like, yeah, but she's been doing it forever, right. You know, like, and really good too. So yeah, those are kind of our, I mean, there's older ladies too that really set the path for everybody, the Joan Rivers and the Phyllis Dillers, but yeah.
What about like here in Seattle, who are like the big Seattle comics? I really don't know.
Me?
I know fucking what's his name? That one guy. He's probably not even popular anymore. I know that the Michael Winslow guy. Is he a comedian?
He from Seattle?
Yeah, he made those fucking.
I didn't even know he's from Seattle.
He made those beatboxing noises. Where
people say Joel Mchale because he started doing stand up and improv here when he was at UW. Jeff Dye is from here, who's like, he's on a lot of NBC shows, but really funny comic. He's actually from Kent, which is right where I'm from.
Renton, right?
Yeah, I'm from Renton.
What?
Yeah. Shout out to Renton.
Said no one.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, I know what you would consider. So we had, I don't know if you've ever seen a Dry Bar, like their specials. They started doing specials.
Dry Bar?
Yeah. It's because it's like clean.
Oh,
it's
something I could go to.
It's like a, yeah.
God.
It's like a Mormon company, I think.
Oh, no.
But so they did these specials and a lot of people from here did them. And then we're like, I don't know, whatever. We'll just see what happens. You know, I got paid to film a special. Now I have this tape. And then they put them online and it went like the most viral stand-up videos ever. And the guy who's their biggest, most views ever, I mean, it's over like 100 million views, is Brad Upton, he's from here, lives here, been doing stand-up for over, I mean, almost 40 years, used to open for Joan Rivers all the time. Really great stand-up comedian, and I jokingly call him my comedy dad. Ooh. But then it's been in the last, 3 years that he's had, like, he's a special event now because of all of this, special attention that he got from Dry Bar. So it's interesting. And there's a few other comics around here too that have, like, you're following changes because of those things.
There's Nate Jackson, a comedian? Mm-hmm. I've heard that guy.
Yeah, he's great. He's been on some shows lately. He's from Olympia, or like Lacey, but he opened that second club in Tacoma, which seems to be a really great club. I haven't been there yet because I'm just super booked.
And then there's this one guy, I forget his name. He has like dreads and like a beard. He's like a taller guy. I don't know. That could be anyone.
I know. Well, it's hard because, like, okay, so Jack Knight, who's well known and is on like a lot of TV shows, he's from Renton as well, but he didn't start doing stand-up until he moved, I think, to New York, but now he's in LA. So there's some people who are like from here, but they're not necessarily from the comedy scene itself.
Got it.
Before they moved, but we'll claim them for sure.
Right.
And then a lot of guys. So Fahim Anwar is from here. He's great, but they're in LA now, guys like that. So,
like, would you be considered a Seattle comedian? Like, have you stayed here, or have you left, or what's your deal?
I did leave. Yeah, I lived in LA for 3 years, and then but I tour a lot, and so I wasn't there all the time. And then it's maybe like a year before COVID, I kind of wasn't living anywhere. I just was on the road all the time.
A nomad?
Got rid of my apartment in LA, And then slowly kind of came back up here because I think as my career got better, it made more sense for me not to have to be anywhere. So why wouldn't I be here where my people are? And honestly, I was in LA last week, and I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I was there and I was like, people would move from here and go to Los Angeles because they thought that the weather here was affecting their mental health. Then they go to LA and it would get worse. I was like, yes, because you live here. Like, it's, first of all, if it's an environmental thing for you, it's gross there. It's dirty. And
it's fucking smoggy.
It's like, I used to
Skid
go
Row
for
is
walks
nuts.
in my shorts and then come inside and you could wipe my legs with like a paper towel and it would be like just black all over it. Like just, it was gross.
I wonder what the cancer rate is in LA is.
It's true compared to other places. Yeah, but I was there and I was just like, oh, I mean, because I had a good time. I had fun shows and stuff. Totally fine visiting. But I just was like, oh, why your mental health is bad? It's because you live here.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily what happened to me. But I was just like, I'm traveling a ton. The stand-up is what I want to do. You know, of course, I want some opportunities, but I make way more money from touring. So it just made sense for me to focus on that part. And now we've added some other things, which help a lot. But so, and then I like the idea because people are moving. There's kind of an odd exodus coming from LA and New York. During this time, a lot of people went home to their families when they couldn't, nothing was open. So I like the idea of having a stable, normal life in a place that I want to live in, and still being able to do things and be just as successful from here. And I think I would love to see Seattle kind of continue to grow and cultivate all of its art areas. And it's a great place. It's always been a great place for music and live theater. And so I think we can kind of piggyback off that idea and continue to. Plays used to open here all the time that were like touring, or Broadway shows would open here because they just liked the audiences. And so we do have a place that should continue to, or maybe go back to that, I guess. But yeah, continue to have that be a thing that Seattle is known for.
Yeah, and you're part of the NAST community now, so we'll do some brainstorming on how to.
Nice. Maybe we'll do some live shows and we'll do comedy and music and whatever.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're a little bit on a time crunch, so I have one more question, and that's what is some final advice you have for up-and-coming artists, creators, influencers?
Oh, this is always tough. Well, my biggest piece of advice is to be nice. I know that's dumb, but if you want this to be your job, be nice and professional. Treat it the same way you would a job, because you never know who's going to be able to help you or who's going to support you later. And always, well, this sounds so stupid, but listen to yourself. I think that's really important because it is an art. You're the only person that can understand what you're doing. So when people give you advice, including this, take it with a grain of salt. And because you never know, the person who you were asking a question to this year, maybe next year, you do something so different or so successful that they are asking for your advice. So just always be nice, always be professional, and really stay true to what you want to be creating. One, because you won't get burnt out that way. I think when people feel like they're not being fulfilled by what they're creating, that's when you go, I don't really want to do this. And it's just, it keeps it interesting. I don't know. You don't want to get bored, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
Well, what's the easiest way for people to reach you, Monica Nevi?
Yes, Monica Nevi. Everything's my name. So monicanevi.com, which has my calendar with my live shows on it. Instagram at Monica Nevi. Twitter at Monica Nevi. I think TikTok is like Monica Nevi Comedy or something. But yeah, if you search me, you'll find me, and come see live shows. I'm touring all over again. So
Hell yeah. And what's the name of your podcasts?
Oh, yeah. My podcasts are Hug Life and then Dumb Pitches, which is created here in the Third Wheel Podcast Studio.
Hell yeah. This is the NAST podcast with
Monica Nevi.
And we did it.